That's right. Interesting gets better. 44 past 3, 24th Feb 2022. Striking much more and more that is always going to benefit you, and how you don't have to wonder. You just have to listen to it. And all this by the masters, leaders who are just at best when it comes to sharing with their experiences. Joining us in this current debate of technology, agility, and security, and what is the right momentum among this, is our panel speakers. Please welcome Chief Information Security Officer, Catholic Syrian Bank, is Babitha BP. Joining her is Head Cybersecurity, Cairn Oil and Gas, is Neha Taneja. CEO Data Security Council of India. Joining us is Rama, Vedashree. Along with the three, we also have the ex-Vice President of ISM Cybersecurity and Technology Control, JP Morgan Chase, Lopa, Mudraa, Basuu. We also have Director Enterprise IT Security, Philip, Sakshi, Vidur, and along with them is Head Risk Compliance and Information, Meetali, Sharma, Security, SDG Software India Private Limited, and these leaders will be moderated by somebody who's as enthusiastic as all our leaders who are going to be part of this. And no one better than our moderator who will bring about everything that debate should come to an end. The perfect combination conversation. Please welcome Head Customer Experience, Checkpoint Software Technologies, is Amit Sharon with us right now. Amit, over to you.
Thank you, Mitin, and welcome everyone. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. I'm so excited to be here among this inspiring group of women CISOs from a variety of industries, from oil and gas, banking, government, and technology. The world is experiencing a massive digital transformation, and at the same time, we see the threat landscape continuously evolving. That's why today the discussion will be focused around striking a balance between technological agility and security. So moving to the first question, and that one goes to you, Dr. Lopa. Where do you see the majority of cybersecurity threats coming from, and what are the most effective ways to handle it while keeping agility as a priority?
Hello all. Very interesting question, Amit. So what are the sources of cybersecurity risks? Now, cyber risks is a risk associated within a digital ecosystem triggered by unauthorized exploitation or a kind of enormous use of technology and its associated process weakness to gain the access to information system, leading to compromise or system failure, which in turn trigger operational disruption, failure, financial or reputational loss, or regulatory risks. So if we try to broadly categorize, there is an external source, which actually, always we are very cautious about, but there is another interesting category is internal. Now, when it is coming to the external cyber risks, it's any kind of risk that comes from outside of an organization or its extended ecosystem that may include cybercrime, cyberterrorism, corporate espionage, state-sponsored attack, faulty security control at your vendor end, or third parties. And when it is coming to the other category of the risks, right, that's very interesting because as we know that external threats risks are very scary, but as per Foster report, 46% data breaches involve internal unsatisfied employee or ignorance of the employee or third-party partner operating within the impacted ecosystem. Now, when we are looking at that, we can see that, this risks actually triggered through the attack. Those are the threats, right? There are a weakness within the technology, which is going to be get exploited by different kind of attack. It could be a logic bomb, it could be a phishing attack, or any kind of attack. Now, these are all the sources of risks. And now, what is the effective way to handle it? That is most important part. To handle it, first and most important thing is we should know our entire business territory, its dependent area, its connected area, and where is the crown jewel, basically. And what are the platform where this crown jewel are hosted? Also understand the technology stack which are in use. And every technology is having some weakness. What are those weaknesses? How do you handle the configuration of those areas? Do you have any process weakness or a weakness of the malware on those areas? Then create a attack surface monitoring system. Most of the cases, we monitor external attack surface. So I have a territory, and that territory is connected through external entity, and they're accessing some data, maybe some infrastructure, and that is a very focused attack surface monitoring. But what about the internal? So it should be a mix and match of internal and external. Also, we need to understand the attack surface associated to our partners and the third-party support provided, because sometimes there are connectivity associated with or access they are having. They may have a technology weakness or a process weakness, which may in turn trigger some of the negative impact within the area. So it is very important. We should know our business associated territory, and then we'll monitor it. Also, while monitoring, the monitoring is not the ultimate. Do we have a capability to take an action based on the monitoring outcome in time? Do we have a properly established ecosystem to handle if that particular actionable or action cannot be taken care at that moment by the particular organization? So this ecosystem include your partner, maybe your legal administration, or how you are going to actually working in different areas. Now, another thing is, most of the cases we may say that, financial losses, reputational losses, all these are there. So these are related to technology. Now, what would be the regulatory related impact? So some of the cases we need to also study that area. So in short, know your environment, do a thorough gap analysis, and have a very agile approach to handle it. Why agile approach? Because every time some changes going on within the environment, while you are doing so, you need to relook that whatever your stable environment earlier, how they get impacted, or they become vulnerable because there is changes. So apart from attack surface monitoring internally and externally, you need to have a very strong change management system associated with risk management.
Thank you very much. That was very insightful. Meetali, happy to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so Amit, I think Lopa covered most of it. I think one of the key factors that is there right now, if we look at the trends from the last couple of years, and if we look at the Verizon breach investigation reports of 2021, or some of the threat intelligence reports of 2022, we'll come to know that most of the cyber risks that are emerging are from some of the areas like ransomware attacks, because most of that you would see coming in from the ransomware attacks. And they are very planned attacks that are happening right now, taking into account a lot of phishing emails and phishing sources are there, because everybody is working remotely right now. So that means that it becomes an easy target when it comes to phishing emails. And through that, it is like, a lot of account hijacking is happening, specifically the O365 accounts. I think servers which are based on the cloud that have become a target, easy target as of now. Again, being remote, the infrastructure has become cloud sensitive. It is on cloud, moving from on-prem to on-cloud. So that's the reason why a lot of DDoS attacks are happening. Like I said, there are planned ransomware attacks. If we look at the data breaches, the data that is sensitive data that is getting breached, whether you look at Log4j vulnerability, you look at Chronos attack, all of them, or the Facebook attack that happened. So a lot of it is happening due to these stolen credentials. A lot of it is happening due to the ransomware and the phishing attacks. All of this means that now it is time that every CISO of the organization needs to rethink the security strategy of the organization, which means, like Lopa mentioned, you need to identify the crown jewels of your organization. And most importantly, you need to do a risk assessment, a thorough risk assessment of your own threat landscape. You need to understand what are the threat vectors for your environment, do a threat modeling around it, find out what controls are relevant to mitigate that particular risk, and have those risk-based controls in place rather than just dumping in a lot of tools in the environment. So I think that is where the shift would be to relooking your security strategy, relooking at what you have in hand, and then protecting it and having the right controls in place.
Thank you, Meetali. And you mentioned the hybrid work environment, and this really brings me to my next question. That one will go to you, Neha. What are the IT transformation that you see as a result of the hybrid work environment and distributed workforce as we move forward from the COVID outbreak?
Yeah, so one of the key trends, I see emerging post this is an integrated view on cybersecurity. Before I elaborate this particular trend, I would like to continue from where, Meetali also mentioned about the holistic posture, the change in the revamp in the approach. So what has happened is, and let me do a bit of context setting here, especially from the oil and gas sector example. There was a recent, not very recent, but colonial pipeline attack, which kind of the operational impact, it literally tantamounts to wreaking havoc on the operations. So having said that, one of the views which I have on the addressing of the cybersecurity is going to be a holistic security posture management, which will cover even if your cloud security risk, your third party ecosystem, including their fourth parties, which would cover your endpoints, which would cover your mobile devices. So what I see is that going forward, the approach will become more of a 360-degree view. That is one of the trends I see emerging, because when we went remote in the pandemic, nobody really ever thought of a hybrid culture going to emerge as the way forward. And second thing is, as organizations are taking cognizance of various data breaches because of COVID themed attacks, COVID themed phishing attempts, and a lot of information exchange on personal data front because of COVID related testing and all, there would be a lot of more focus around data privacy aspects with a forward looking view also, and secure data management. Secondly, the other trend which I think would emerge is since there's a lot of automation happening, and so it will be more like a targeted automation. When I say targeted automation, for example, I want to get more resiliency into my incident response. So I may go ahead and adopt automation on, the threat responsiveness part of it. Or I may want to improve customer experience. There I may adopt, maybe artificial intelligence or machine learning. So the tie-up between the technology versus alignment to solving a particular category of business problem, I see that evolving more as a cohesive approach. And last but not the least, I think Dr. Lopa mentioned about it, was about the cloud part of it. I think the cloud, people have seen the benefit of the cloud in terms of scalability and the flexibility over the last course of the pandemic initial phases. Having said that, I think cloud security, cloud along with cloud security posture management is here to stay and evolve progressively as more and more organizations gear up for cloud security. So I think that would summarize my view on what I see as the emerging pointers.
Thank you very much. It was really interesting. And you touched upon cloud, and Meetali mentioned the Verizon report. So this really brings me to my next question. That one goes to you, Babitha. And it's according to the Verizon Data Breach Investigation Report, the DBIR, for the first time, cloud attacks surpassed on-premise attacks. What are the top trends or attack vector you're seeing regarding cloud threats in particular?
Yeah, thank you, Amit, for the question. What you said is correct, that during this time, the attack, especially the cloud-based attack, has increased tremendously. Cyber criminals and national state attackers are targeting cloud services more than before. And I think it could be because the cloud adoption during the pandemic was more. More people were moving to the cloud. When it comes to the security aspects, I think that we cannot treat a cloud service as same as that of a traditional on-premises services, where we lack the visibility of the assets, and managing the privacy and data protection in the cloud is more complicated when compared to the on-premise, because we are not having the visibility on it. Some of the top attacks, if we take some of the top attack vectors during the time, especially from the cloud sector, is basically the lack of encryption in the data, which has led to a lot of ransomware and data breaches. So that encryption, whether data is encrypted in the cloud, is first question that comes, and that has been exploited. And then the way the encryption keys are stored and managed. So that is also one of the reasons for which most of the breaches has happened. And definitely authentication, which can be easily bypassed through a rainbow table or password sharing, password pairing, to force the attack, broken authentication, different types of, or even password escalation. So that was a weakest link which was there in the cloud, and the access was not limited to, but the need-based access was not being provided. Because of that privilege, the fraudsters are getting access to the cloud, and many of the data are breached. And one of the biggest challenge which we see when it comes to a cloud is the shadow IT. How the data or how the segregation of the servers is done, whether it is a dedicated server or it is a virtual server, or whether that server is shared only to your company, or whether there is really a visible partition for that. So all those things, and what all other devices which is being in and around, and who is using it, whether it is kept aside. So all those things are not visible when it comes to a cloud. When they are just giving a front-end picture of that, and we are just adopting to, if we want, it is different buckets and storage space, and even if the security aspects also we consider, we can adopt to some of the security features which is given by the cloud providers, but we don't know, we cannot take that, okay, when we are going for an application as a service, if we want a particular web solution which we find that they are more capable enough, we cannot opt for that. We have to take the solution which that cloud provider is providing to us. So these are the challenges which is there in the existing cloud scenario, which has been exploited by the fraudsters to loot them. And now everywhere we are talking about the zero trust architecture. How far it is getting implemented in the cloud infra, we are not sure. And as Lopa has mentioned, a lot of attackers, the internal actors, which has played a big role for many of the frauds. So yeah, the internal security or physical security is being taken care in the cloud environment. So all these are I think is a major reason for this rise in the data breach, especially in the cloud. Yeah, the organization has to definitely adopt to cloud services, should think about the security aspects. They have to see how the data is encrypted, multi-factor authentication need to be definitely be used, how the privileged access is being given. And before that, at the design phase itself, we have to think why we want to adapt to the cloud, what kind of data is going to reside in the cloud, what are the security features available, whether that is enough for me to secure that data. All these things we have to think twice, and after that only we have to adapt to the cloud or any technology. That is what I feel.
Absolutely. Thank you, Babitha. Keeping it with you and moving to the next question is, with the increasing use of technology, security and compliance have became a top priority for corporates. How do you ensure the best security guardrails and compliant environment in your organization?
Yeah, there are a lot of technologies which is coming now, and the kind of attacks which are happening today wherein the attackers are using highly sophisticated technologies like AI, ML, and all to invade into our environment. And because that is earlier days, we say that it takes almost 240 days for a person to get into the system and be in the system and to finally do a data breach or an attack on the system. But now it has been reduced to 2 months or even a month. So that they are also using high sophisticated technology, not only we are using it. So we should be aware of that. And we have to build our system accordingly to face these situations. So organizations should prepare enough to detect the threats well in advance and put the controls in place and to limit the loss. That is what we can say, because we don't know how this can come, because a lot of zero-day attacks are happening every day, supply chain attacks are happening. But only thing what we can do is we can heighten the security posture of the organization. So definitely we have to adapt to the zero trust architecture, which is not a single go architecture or a single tool. It is a multi-layered, multi-tiered, multi-tooled method where we say by default no to all.
Thank you very much.
Data traffic can come to my premises, and need-based access only should be given with multi-factor authentication. And now even we are going for adaptive authentication, wherein based on the behavior analysis, even passwordless access authentication can be provided. So we can even explore on such kind of things. And the visibility of the IT asset I have as actually earlier also mentioned. When we talk about the IT asset, it is not only the servers and all. Now we need to be more worried about the components used in an application to avoid supply chain kind of attack, and like Log4j and all. Unless and until we know what is the component or what are different other applications is being used in a particular application, if a vulnerability is being reported, we won't be in a position to fix it at an earlier stage. So a complete IT list, including the components of the applications used in a server or a particular device, we have to have a better idea about it. And user behavior analysis based EDR is a must in the organization, which is very much required in the kind of a zero-day kind of attack, where based on the behavior, the system we should be alert as if any malicious activity is happening in the system, and we can take necessary measures to contain that.
Yeah, thank you very much, Babitha. I have to move to the next question, and that one will go to you, Rama. How organization cybersecurity evolved over the last 12 months? You unmute. Can you please unmute?
You said the question is for Rama ma'am, right?
Yeah, that one. Yeah. I see she unmuted. Yeah, so go ahead, Rama.
Yeah, thank you, Amit. Wonderful to be on the panel with 5 CISOs. I think what's happening not just in the last 12 months, but in the last 2 years that we see, massive digitization, expansion of the enterprise, IT infrastructure assets beyond, core enterprise networks, a lot of cloud migration that is happening. What we are beginning to see is any large enterprise actually looking at a very holistic, the way Neha talked about it, a very holistic cyber resilience planning. It's not just about, cybersecurity risk mitigation and the response and how do you continuously keep assessing the risk. I think people are looking at with the learnings in the post-pandemic, where at scale you had to move from work from home or hybrid culture, right? Where there is an attempt to revisit everything aligned with the digitization roadmap of the enterprise and look at what that cyber resilience strategy is all about. I think a lot of investments are going into endpoint protection, because the way work is happening from anywhere and from using any devices, not necessarily very secure devices given by the enterprise. We are beginning to see mainstreaming of the zero trust paradigm. Most CISOs of all the critical verticals are definitely looking at that. And even in the zero trust migration, it's not like, while out in the next 2 months, you can be zero trust implementation across the enterprise. I think there's a phased roadmap that people are looking at, whether it's in terms of users, devices, some kind of applications, right? So there is a mainstreaming of zero trust that is happening. And increasingly, we are seeing very critical business workloads migrating to public cloud. I think that is a trend that is happening across various verticals in all geographies in the world as we talk to cybersecurity services providers from India who serve these global customers. There, I think there is a lot more deeper understanding on how do you implement cloud security and the kind of shared responsibility, data classification frameworks that need to be in place when you start moving critical workloads to the public cloud. How do you work with your cloud service provider, with your managed service provider? That integration of the ecosystem of who's managing your core IT and application infrastructure to who's managing security, I think there is a more holistic way in which both the provider ecosystem across, digital plus cloud plus security is coming together, based on which I think a very comprehensive cyber resilience strategy is getting charted out, and based on which some of the new technology solutions, whether it's for zero trust or leveraging AI and ML a lot more deeply in your security stack. We are also seeing not just migrating, business workloads to public cloud. We are seeing a lot of acceptance both from CIOs and CISOs in consuming security services and security products off the cloud. And I think the pandemic gave us no choice, because if you were on-prem SOC and if your city had a lockdown or the building was under a lockdown, you had to quickly not only move your workforce, you had to look at different ways in which you will access your data centers, you'll provision your SOCs. So we're beginning to see cloud getting mainstreamed, not just for business workloads, but also for security services and products. And any CISO we talk to in India and through our industry members, when we understand what global customers are doing, I think zero trust paradigm and that implementation and assessing your own enterprise's readiness for a phased approach to zero trust is something very high. We are also beginning to see with the very increasing regulations for privacy, looking at technology solutions to implement privacy in the company rather than just a policy and a training and awareness approach. I think we are now beginning to see privacy implementation and security implementation are slightly differentiated approaches. And when you're selecting a technology stack, it's not just for your InfoSec purpose and compliance purpose, but also how do you look at the security technologies and privacy technologies independently. These are some of the trends that we are seeing. So cloud security, endpoint security, leveraging AI and ML for a lot more, beefing up your cyber security preparedness is one thing that we are seeing, and zero trust. In critical information infrastructure sectors like oil and gas, particularly during the post-pandemic, we have seen a lot of convergence in IT and OT. So there, there's a lot more attention to what needs to be done in terms of SCADA security, operational technologies and industrial control systems. That's getting a completely different attention at CISOs or overall technology leadership level. This is what we see across various sectors. In sectors which touch consumers and, typically digital payments, banking, e-commerce, edutech, we are beginning to see a lot of focus on API security, because a lot of systems are getting opened up to third parties. And how do you, when you're opening up your application infrastructure to third parties for, offering some personalized services or integrated services, API security is another thing we are seeing, but that we see more in enterprises which are servicing consumers rather than B2B.
Thank you very much, Rama. That was fascinating. Sakshi, any additional thoughts from your side?
Yeah, I think as Rama ma'am mentioned, this global pandemic has transformed the way we live. It's it's encouraging new adoption and increased use of digital solutions in every facet of life. I think we've talked about the rash of some high-profile breaches, say SolarWinds and Log4j, the impact of that. I think a lot of points have already been covered where, we've talked about the cyber threat landscape is continuing to be as ominous and worrying. So I'd just like to highlight that, the approach on the strategy, how we've seen the evolution in the last 12 months. I think there are these 5 key focus areas that I'd like to talk about. The top one for me being governance, how we define identity and access, the asset management, especially with such a large influx of BYOD or bring your own device, and then the mechanism to handle incident response. And, this is all kind of around the entire gamut of business continuity and resilience. So I can share a couple of examples from my experience on this one in 3-4 areas that probably would be different from what additional to what Rama ma'am said. I think one of them is updating legacy systems, apart from, assimilating the emerging technologies like 5G and artificial intelligence into the security platforms. And yes, there are many new shiny toys and tools for cybersecurity operators, but the challenge remains to know how to best orchestrate these tools, and understand what is available and what is going to best mitigate your industry specific threats. So again, the scale and frequency of cyber attacks against critical infrastructure is continuing to grow. That's the trend we are seeing, and 2022 is continuing to be the same. Of course, the ransomware attacks are continuing at an alarming pace, and it's going to be more targeted, is what I feel. Apart from that, I think talking about BCP, I feel it's important to address in your strategy that, the first rule that a cyber or IT problem is that, how quickly it becomes a business problem. So the primary step should be taking, right now is to, exercise your business continuity plans. That one, of course, cloud has got covered adequately. So I just want to say that, we are anticipating a new wave of cyber attacks, especially the news today morning on the, Ukrainian side, the Western, how it's going to impact, the Western energy, finance, communications, infrastructure. So I think the security and intelligence teams at several major multinationals have indicated that, they're anticipating a lot of these Russian attacks. So I think the threats are, expanding very, worrying. So these are my thoughts around, cyber incidents and how we incorporate resilience into the strategy as well.
Yeah, thank you very much. Very insightful. Keeping the conversation with you, Rama, some of you mentioned some high-profile vulnerabilities and attacks, and in the last year, we've seen some cyber vulnerabilities grabbing headlines. What do you think was the most significant breach or vulnerability, and what can we learn from it?
Yeah, that's a great question, Amit. While, there are quite a lot of high-profile attacks, whether, not just in the last 12 months, but in the recent past, whether it's the Colonial Pipeline attack or, the Kisaya software, I would like to throw some light on the Kisaya software attack, because that has a lot of learnings and the impact. I think it's extremely important to look at attacks from a perspective of what are the biggest learnings for the CISO or for the security industry. Because I think this attack looked at how a zero-day vulnerability of a very innocuous software, which lets you take care of, remote management of endpoints or what is called as the VSA software, how a zero-day vulnerability of a very innocuous software, right, can be used for, the third-party supply chain risk, where the third party and the supply chain risk really got highlighted, and how those kind of vulnerabilities in a very common commoditized software product, which is used by multiple service providers. Here, several MSPs or managed service providers were used as the target. And the target was not just the MSPs. The MSPs were targeted to amplify the attack to the entire thousands of enterprise customer base. So if you see the supply chain attack where you're looking at supply chain, which could be a third party, fourth party, the entire downstream, right? One of them talked about the fourth party also, right? Those were the learnings. And at one point, it was a combination of, zero-day vulnerability of a commodity software plus a ransomware attack, right? So there, when you look at these possibilities where ransomware attacks plus supply chain and zero-day vulnerabilities of some commonly used enterprise software product I think that was the biggest learning, where you need to look at not just your mega enterprise platforms and products you are infusing into your thing, but it could be something which you are using to, manage a particular set of servers or a particular set of devices. So I would say, from an impact and learnings for the future, how do you give a lot more attention to third-party tools that you're using directly into your enterprise networks, or your service providers or managed service providers are using, and the supply services companies as a vector for amplifying the attack to large enterprise networks. I think that was the biggest learning. So I would, while the colonial pipeline was extremely big ticket attack on critical infrastructure, where an entire pipeline and East Coast was under attack, and it was also a big ransomware attack. But I would say, from a learning perspective for the security professional industry plus CISOs, I would call out the Kisaya attack, because those kind of attacks may, where some tool that you're using or your service provider is using, you may not be giving it as much because it's not your crown jewel. You think your service provider is using it. You may not even have visibility that a tool like this is being used on your network sometimes.
Yeah, that's true. Thank you, Rama. And moving to you, Meetali, the wild, the attack surface was getting wilder, especially also in the cloud. How do you see this continue to evolve?
So I think Rama ma'am and Sakshi have covered a lot of points related to cloud security. And I would agree to what they have said. A lot of exploitation in the cloud is on the known vulnerabilities. So there are certain vulnerabilities, there are certain APIs, there are certain insecure protocols within the cloud environment that are being exploited by hackers to take account of the data, sensitive data that you are putting on the cloud. So I think it's very important, it is very critical that you secure the cloud, which means you should have a very secure architecture when you are moving any of your data towards the cloud. So you should be very clear on what is that data that I really want to put in the cloud. And then you need to evaluate your cloud vendor very strictly when it comes to security posture. You need to see and ensure that whatever you are putting, is that going in the secure way. I think one of the key elements would be the identity access management and the role-based access on the cloud. So, you need to have those proper access controls in place. You need to have that identity and access management in place. Yes, the concept of zero trust, that is coming up in cloud as well. And that's the trend that we see coming up in the next couple of years as well. I think that is what is going to grow, because most of the applications are moving to cloud, and people are preferring having SaaS-based applications rather than having on-prem servers and all. So I think that would be one of the key factors. And yes, the business continuity aspect definitely would be in place. If you look at the Kronos attack, a lot of the cases, people didn't have the BCP or the backup in place. They didn't know how to restore it. And that leads to the fact that your business continuity disaster recovery plans, not just the plans should be in place. I think the testing and recovery of those plans is definitely important, because you need to understand that now or in future, someday you would be in attack. Either you don't know about it or you have already been compromised. So keeping that in mind, I think it's very important how quickly you can come back to the normal, how resilient you are. I think that cyber resilience would be the key when it comes to implementing any security in the cloud environment.
Thank you, Meetali. Moving to you, Dr. Lopa. What are the strategies that one needs to keep in mind while devising a security roadmap?
When you're devising a security roadmap, first thing is we need to have clarity about the business strategy. That's a current strategy, midterm and long-term business strategy. Alignment of IT strategy to support that business strategy. What are the new technology adoption going to happen? Now, when we have that clarity, what are the support equipment or support ecosystem around that? These strategies are major contributor towards a service roadmap. Apart from that, also there are lots of input coming from enterprise risks function, internal audit function, and external audit function. And if you have a regulator, above that, we need to also consider the geopolitical pointers, where you are operating from, where are those locations, sectorial attack, if there is specific specific technology which are continuously under attack. Once you have those input,
seems like we have a little bit of a connectivity issue, so we'll be back with you, and in the meantime we'll move to the next question, and that one goes to you, Neha. As of today, the number of women taking up cybersecurity roles is extremely less. What, according to you, would be the one pull factor to encourage women to chart a career and hence reduce the skill gap in this important space?
So, I mean, one point before, again, I give a pointed answer to what additionally can be done. One is to get the overall perspective right. Getting more women involved in cybersecurity is not just to, the importance is not just to bridge the gap in the, the ratio between, the gender gap is not the main premise of this. The main premise is getting more and more cyber related perspective. So a different perspective, because you deal with the attackers from a different background and different perspectives. Internal threat may have a very different perspective from a geopolitical, advanced persistent threat group. So having the diversity at the core helps the overall functionality of the domain as a whole. Having said that, few pointed things which come as an example to my mind is, like, for example, Data Security Council of India does a Cyber Shiksha initiative, which I was also briefly associated with. So more such initiatives, and this initiative is targeted right at the engineering students who have taken engineering discipline, wherein you inform them of various subdomains within the cybersecurity vertical itself, so that they, at the initial start only, they know that trajectory and the path they would want to take up. Second aspect is from middle management to leadership. Over there, one of the major distinctive things I would say is that in terms of coaching, the nuances of leadership, there has to be separate programs. It cannot be both the genders together, because the leadership has different traits when it comes to the evolution. So it's better to have programs which are directed specifically at women leaders, and different programs for male leaders, because then that gives the perspective in a particular manner to gradually and on a continual basis to move from middle management to leadership. I think I think that summarizes my view on this one.
Thank you very much. Very interesting. So we have a few more minutes, and the next question will go back to you, Dr. Lopa, with a new question, and then Sakshi. What would be your advice to other women who would like to take forward their career in cyber? So we start with you, Dr. Lopa.
So when it is coming to the technology, I personally strongly believe that technology doesn't discriminate on gender. It's on you, how you grab the technology. And very importantly, cyber is a huge ocean. There are lots of areas in cyber that is starting. Maybe a very good point to start is something like incident response or security testing. But if we are then maintaining the security hygiene, system hardening, these are some of the areas to start with. But when it is gradually moving on, cyber is also having some other areas. Apart from VAPT, there are huge requirement in the governance field. So people who are actually, have a very good hands-on, at least 4 or 5 years on those areas of different areas of technology, they can move to the next step, governance. Because governance today, if we look at the shift happening left shift happening. Governance is nowhere going to be a checklist based. It is very, very practically technology based thing, right? So one can look at those areas. There are even cyber law. That's a huge emerging area. People can look at that. So it is basically, you know, one need to understand the comfort level as well as the affinity to learn, because it's a field where you need to continuously learn, and accordingly you can opt for your domain, and then you expand your arena to the other domain of the cyber.
Thank you very much, Sakshi. Last few words from you regarding taking forward a career in cyber for women.
Sure, I'll just do it quickly. My 2 pieces of advice. I think everyone has bad days. We need to all pause, reset, restart, but never quit. Always pick yourself and keep going. That's number 1 advice. And secondly, I'll say that, you know, for the cyber domain specifically, I say be brave and, you know, experiment. And, you know, one should not get intimidated. We should take chances. Taking chances and demanding respect in a male-dominated field is absolutely fine in order to gain the experience and knowledge. It's no secret that, you know, technology, cyber is a male-dominated field, and there are always, you know, questions whether women belong here or not. But I can tell from my personal experience, I had to apply and fight for several positions multiple times in order to work my way up here to being a security leader. So if you catch yourself feeling intimidated, remember, security does not require any innate magical abilities. You can learn everything you need to know to succeed. So don't be afraid to fight for what you want.
Thank you very much, and thank you everyone for this insightful and fascinating discussion, and it was even inspiring for me personally. So thanks a lot and have a nice evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so very much to all our panelists and of course our amazing moderator for bringing out the best conversation straightforward in what seems like the perfect hour for all of us. Thank you again. Quickly want to thank Amit, Sharon for being an amazing orator. Thank you, Amit. To all our panelists, Meetali, Sharma, Sakshi, Vidur, Lopa, Mudraa, Basuu, Rama, Vedashree, Neha, Taneja, and of course, Babitha, BP. Thank you so much. I wish you great luck and just bring in the motivation that you did in the last 1 hour. I'm sure this is going to continue ahead for much more. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Well, with that, let's move on to what is next. And this is going to be a curtain downer conversation. Women as global change agents, redefining the world's perception. Up next.